So to suggest that the national security advisor, well, we'll just subpoena him, he'll come in, and that'll be easy, there won't be any problem. That's not the way it would work, because there's a vital constitutional privilege at stake there. And it's important for the institution of the office of the presidency, for every president, to protect that privilege.
The White House laying out a bold defense of presidential powers and executive privilege during yesterday's Q&A in the Senate impeachment trial.
The defense pushing back on calls to hear testimony from John Bolton, President Trump's former national security advisor, as newly resurfaced videos raise questions about Bolton's credibility on Ukraine. Let's bring in today's headliner. He is Hogan Gidley, Deputy Assistant to the President, the Principal Deputy White House Press Secretary. Hogan, good morning to you.
Hey,
Thanks for coming in.
Hey, Ed. Hey, Sandra. How are you all?
How are you feeling this morning about the possibility of witnesses? There are now some predictions from Republican senators that there will not be any witnesses, number one, and number two, this whole thing could be wrapped up tomorrow. Are you that confident?
Well, I want to make one thing very clear. There already have been 17 witnesses. Remember, House Democrats put them forward when it was in their court. In fact, we got no witnesses. We didn't get to release any evidence. We didn't get to cross-examine. So this whole notion that somehow will there or won't there be any witnesses, we've already had 17. The White House and our side have had none. So I want that very clear. As far as moving forward and whether senators will vote for that or not, again, that's up to them. We've laid out a pretty clear case. The president not only has done nothing wrong, but everything he did do was constitutional, it was legal, it was lawful, and it was, quite frankly, on behalf of the American people. And the process was a sham. I think we all can admit to that at this point. And so we'll see what the senators decide to do.
Are you confident it's going to wrap up, or is this going to drag on for a while?
Well, I'm confident the president is going to be acquitted because there is no evidence of wrongdoing at all. But it remains to be seen what the Senate will do. You know, they wanted this process to play out over there. We're thankful they've given us, quite frankly, a fair trial where the House decided to make it all political, make it all partisan, try and attack this president, not giving him any due process whatsoever. But it remains to be seen. I don't want to get too much into hypotheticals because we're going to try and wrap up the Q&A session this afternoon, or late this evening, I should say, depending on whether or not they use all 8 hours, and we'll see what they do moving forward. But we're ready either way.
So much seemed to change with the release of that portion, the leak, I should say, of that portion of John Bolton's manuscript from his book that has not yet been published. Is the White House trying to stop that book from publishing?
Absolutely not. In fact, the last sentence of the letter that the NSC actually sent to Ambassador Bolton's attorney said, we're happy to work with you so that the book can be published. But let's be very clear here. Right now, according to that letter, the NSC has found top secret information in that book. We don't want to risk the lives of American citizens, our assets overseas, not to mention put our brave men and women in harm's way by getting out information that would reveal sources and methods, for example. So these types of things are monitored at the career level. This isn't a political decision. The NSC has a process for this, and it's very commonplace.
There's multiple reports out there that the White House believes that there is classified information in that book, and therefore the president doesn't want it published. Is there an effort to stop it from being published by the White House?
I'm not aware of any effort for it to stop being published. I can tell you, if the ambassador wants to write a book, we have to make sure we have a responsibility, quite frankly, to the American people and our citizens abroad to protect them at every way possible. And we can't have classified information being published. And so there are serious questions around the information in this book. It's obvious that the National Security Council has deemed a lot of it something that should not be released to the public. We'll see what happens moving forward. But the conversation has been open, it has been started, but I can guarantee you this, the president will make sure that the American people and our soldiers, both men and women who are fighting to keep our freedoms every day, are safe and protected, and that this information, if top secret, if classified, does not make it into the public sphere.
We played a clip a short time ago of Adam Schiff just a year or so ago questioning the credibility of John Bolton. And then there's also this video that you know has surfaced of John Bolton, August 2019, saying this about the president's contacts with Ukraine.
We'll be meeting President Zelensky. He and President Trump have already spoken twice. President called to congratulate President Zelensky on his election and then on his success in the parliamentary election. They were very warm and cordial calls. We're hoping that they'll be able to meet in Warsaw and have a few minutes together.
Cordial, everything was fine. Might it turn out if John Bolton does testify, he might actually say some things that are good for the president?
Well, look, John Bolton kind of it's interesting. He's another person in a long line of people who, when in the president's orbit, are treated like trash from the mainstream media and mocked and derided. But when they get out and say a word or two against the president, they're all of a sudden the toast of the town. But in this clip, for instance, you cut it a little bit short there. He also went on to say we want to make sure there's no corruption in Ukraine, which is one of the core things that our defense team is talking about, and one of the issues Donald Trump ran on and tried to root out in a lot of countries that we give money to. So this is an interesting piece of evidence that's kind of popped up, and it goes to show that the call was cordial. It was warm. They have a good relationship. President Zelensky pointed out the fact that other countries don't pay their fair share, that America pays more than most. And so, you know, for this to continue down this road, I think everyone now sees this for what it is. It's purely partisan. It's purely political. Nancy Pelosi is putting her own selfish desires above the needs of the American people, and it's time to move on.
So does the president, is he preparing for those articles of impeachment to come up for a vote as soon as tomorrow, as some Republican senators are suggesting?
Well, as I've said before, if they want a full-blown trial with witnesses and that's what they decide to vote for, they better be prepared for, as Jay Sekulow said yesterday, the whistleblower, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Adam Schiff, and others. If it's an outright dismissal, which we believe it should be done because there are no facts that implicate the president has done anything wrong, no criminal charges in those articles of impeachment, or something in between. We're ready regardless because the facts are on our side.
Hogan, there was a question from Senator Ted Cruz in the Q&A about whether it even mattered if the president had engaged in a quid pro quo. Here's what Alan Dershowitz said. I want you to react.
Right.
Every public official that I know believes that his election is in the public interest. And if a president does something which he believes will help him get elected in the public interest, that cannot be the kind of quid pro quo that results in impeachment.
A lot of eyebrows being raised about the idea that one of the president's lawyers is saying he can't be impeached for an act that he thinks will help him get reelected. Can you explain that one?
Well, it's interesting. There was kind of a 1-2 punch there with Alan Dershowitz and also Patrick Philbin, Deputy Counsel to the President, saying, listen, you don't want to start impeaching people on what's inside their head, meaning a lot of the senators in that chamber make decisions that would or could benefit them in an upcoming election. But that's not what this was about. This president wasn't thinking about a 2020 election. He was thinking about taxpayer dollars, time, and money spent by the American people. We've outlined that clearly, and Alan Dershowitz made the point, if any of these allegations are true that the New York Times alleges from John Bolton's book, it's still not an impeachable offense. It goes to prove further that the Democrats do not have a case. All they want to do is remove a duly elected president, overturn the 2016 election, and just put their hatred of him paramount above all successes that the American people could experience if they just got to work instead of continuing to play politics.
Hogan, we're out of time. Just a couple seconds left. On the coronavirus, the president's been asked about this. He believes that we're doing what it's going to take to contain it. There are reports that the United States might cancel all flights to and from China. Is that under consideration?
I don't have an announcement on that front at this time, but the risk remains low. We put out a task force yesterday evening headed by Secretary Azar and also the NSA Robert O'Brien. We have been monitoring this on an hourly basis. The president has been getting briefings regularly as well. We want to make sure all Americans are safe, and that's exactly what we're doing. But as far as future steps, we'll wait and see what happens as it relates to the virus and its spreading. But we're working with international governments, we're working at the state and local level as well to make sure that the people in this country remain safe and also well.
How would you describe the president's level of concern? Final thought.
Look, the president is always focused on making sure the American people are safe, whether it's via the military or whether it has to do with some type of pandemic. And we're not to that level yet, of course, but the president is always focused on making sure the people are safe and secure in this country, and he's doing it in this case as well.
Hogan Gidley from the White House, we appreciate your comments and coming in today. Thank you.
Thank you.